On Titan is a show that will always hold a special place in my heart. And I think I'm comfortable in saying that it's my favorite piece of media that I have ever seen. Back from watching it for the first time in 2016 to being obsessed with it during the underlying COVID pandemic in 2021 to 2022, and now seeing it end right before my eyes. Man, I will miss this show. When people ask me why I'm so attached to this show, I always have one thing to say right back at them. To some people, they'll say the amazing plot of this show. Some people will say the phenomenal usage of complex themes. And some people will say the amazing soundtrack. And I will agree with those people. As great as those parts and aspects of the show are, there's one thing that I will say, and that one thing is the characters of this show. I love nothing more than the characters of Attack on Titan. Each character introduced, no matter how small they are, help drive the plot to tell a cohesive and interesting story. Spanning from Aaron's decisions to Jean's contemplations and Reiner's bipolarization, each character is given a complexity behind them. But who do I think truly is the best, and I mean best, written character of Attack on Titan? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Here are my top 10 characters of Attack on Titan. Frankly honest with you, there are just so many characters that are so interesting in this show to fit all of them into the top 10 list. So here are some honorable mentions. At number 17 is Commander Pixies. At number 16 is Grisha Yeager. At number 15 is Kenny Ackerman, who gives one of the most powerful messages in quotes.
酒だったり、女だったり、神様だったりもする。一族、王様、夢、子供、力。みんな何かに酔っ払ってねえと。やってられなかったんだな。みんな何かの奴隷だった。
At number 14 is Sasha, the character that was always meant to be the light tone of this show, and once she was gone, you just could feel the darker shift in tone of the show. At number 13 is Flock Forster, a character who symbolized Erwin's ideals, but to an even more extensive degree. And if Erwin were still alive, I could see him following into Flock's ideals. At number 12 is Historia Rice, a character who is powerful in terms of breaking out of the torment they experienced in their childhood. And the character that was just so few from getting into the top 10 list and was just so close into getting into that list is Ymir. And man, she just needed a bit more to get into the top 10 list. I mean, arguably back in season 1 and 2, she was the best written character of the show. Okay, on to the big boys. I think Annie is one of the most conflicting characters to feel about in the show, and I can definitely understand both sides. But to be honest, I think that's what makes her character great. Annie is a very selfish character, and she doesn't even pretend a single bit. Her character really doesn't have any political ideologies, only stemming from the fact that she wants to return to her father, and I can see why people call her one-sided. But I think this is what makes Annie a much more strongly written character as the show progresses. We get to see her actually care about the things other than herself and her father, therefore showing her not being a one-sided character. We get to see her feel empathy towards her quote-unquote comrades that she manipulated, and in a way she's similar to Reiner in the guilt she feels, but she's definitely more selfish. I think that's why I also think Annie and Armin's scenes together are very important rather than being unnecessary, as some people point out. I think Armin is very important to Annie's character all the way back from their interactions in season 1. Annie genuinely doesn't understand why she kept Armin alive, and that's where her empathetic and caring side starts to show. She wanted Armin to see this good side of her because she genuinely thinks he's a good person and he is someone who has words that actually matter to her perception for herself. Armin serves as this motivation for Annie, and Armin was the figure that Annie wanted to protect when she thought her father died. I think Armin being liked by Annie is a representation of her finally caring for other people rather than her selfish ways. Someone told me that Jean was their favorite character back in the first half of season 1. I would honestly say, good for you. Jean started as this character who was very tropey and stereotypical, and to be honest, the first piece of dialogue he said, I honestly said to myself, this guy is getting killed right away. That was until this scene.
Sorry, Marco. I don't even know which of these bones are yours anymore. If I hadn't become a soldier, I would have never had to worry about who's next.
Promise me you're not gonna take this the wrong way. But I don't think you're a good leader because you're strong. I think it's because you know what it is to be weak. You're one of us. You're scared out of your mind, just like we all are. It makes you alert, sympathetic.
So, what am I going to do now?
Jean is the perfect representation of humanity in Attack on Titan. Jean was arguably the character in season 1 who had the most character development, and I will say that he had more development than the main 3. From wanting to join the military police to being this selfless character back in Trost, all the way to the final episode of the show. Every decision Jean makes doesn't revolve him and his friends only. He's shown to have more compassion towards everyone else who isn't him or his friends. Jean serves as the conflict for characters who think selfishly, and he gives these arguments where you can truly feel for him. He knows when to be a scout and when to be a person who shows their personal grudges and feelings towards someone. And that scene between him and Connie is one of my favorite scenes in the entire show. He accepts that he will never be able to live the life he wanted, but if he dies, it's with no regrets because he did what was best into saving the rest of humanity. Connie even mentions that it was Jean who swayed Connie to join the Survey Corps. He's someone who shows that being vulnerable is not a weakness. His quote-unquote vulnerability is why he made it so far in this chaotic journey. In a sense, Jean is a character that contrasts the insanity of Eren's actions. Anji really grew on me as the show progressed on. She started as this funny character to this very complex character in season 3. A lot of people say her death was very quick and out of place, but I think it was masterfully executed. It started in season 3 when Erwin tasked her to take the role of commander, all the way to season 4 when she just can't help but reflect on what Erwin would do in the situation she is experiencing. She is aware that Erwin was far better than her, and her character is trying to live up to Erwin's skills of being a leader. And her ending is a beautifully written message that even though she did not quite live up to Erwin's expectations, the expectations of everyone else, is Erwin acknowledging that she did her best in her time as the commander of the Survey Corps. Oof, man, Mikasa. So a lot of people may be shocked that Mikasa is this low on the list, and I have my reasonings as to why. I think there are just many moments of the show where her character is really only about being Eren, rather than focusing on the underlying themes of the complexity of her character. And don't get me wrong, I think she has some magnificent character beats in the story. I think that most of Mikasa's character is already self-explanatory, and I think she's definitely one of the more explicit characters when it comes to the themes of their character. And I think most of her goals and her character is already self-explanatory, especially on that final episode. And off her character by saying that she definitely is one of, if not the character who ended the most tragically. Okay, so we're definitely entering into the territory of characters who can definitely be a contender for the number one spot. Zeke is an amazingly written character. Zeke showcases this tragedy of living a horrible life during his childhood. Therefore, he just doesn't seem to appreciate the little tiny things in life anymore. He was forced to take on this role that his two father figures forced upon him. He was always stuck of trying to get to the future rather than living in the present. He forgets to appreciate the little things in life and in the moment because he's so caught up in his own goal, in which he really thinks is the right thing for this world. And I think he gets a beautiful send-off where he realizes he can't fulfill his dream anymore, and instead he realizes how happy he could have been if he just focused on the little beautiful things in life. Levi is the representation of pain in this series. I think his character really started to shine during the OVA No Regrets. I interpret his character as someone who is always forced to see his comrades die because he's just someone who can't die himself. It's similar to Reiner in a way where they've come to the point where they think dying is just the easier way to escape suffering. But with Levi, he's bound to a duty that Erwin gave him one last time, and he has to keep living not getting that goal until the very last episode of the series. I think his ending is the most bittersweet, as he finally gets to enjoy life with no order to carry out, where he's finally able to rest. But he's the only one left alive from the original squad of scouts who devoted their hearts for the greater cause. He lived so that the hearts that were devoted by Erwin and the others would not be in vain. I think Armin is the character that makes every character in the show become human to an extent. He was given these innocent eyes who had no goal other than reaching the sea, because that's what he dreamt of in life. From being Annie's inspiration to making Zeke and Eren realize that to be happy is to appreciate the little things in life. He knew to look what was around him rather than looking into the distance like Eren and Zeke. He was there to remind every single character in the show that even in a cruel world they are living in, you can still find happiness in the tiniest of things. Okay, I'm just not gonna drag this one out. Eren is someone who prioritized nothing but for the betterment of the people he grew up with. Eren made you empathize with him even though he was doing such horrible things to billions of people around the world. He hurt his friends so he could save them. To him, it's like he destroyed the universe so he could save his world. He did selfish things for selfless reasons, and I think that's why his character is such a tragedy. Before this video, I definitely considered putting him in number 1, but man, these two others above him are just such phenomenal characters. But this top 3, I can definitely see myself switching them around. Erwin Smith is arguably the most complex character in the entire show. While Eren was a slave to freedom, Erwin was a slave to truth. Him being a good leader and his commands such as give your hearts are just a facade so that the mission would be accomplished. He has traits that would complement such a horrible leader, but instead, he's a great leader because of those horrible traits. Erwin's inner motives were to always find out if his father's theory was correct. He cares more about Eren rather than his soldiers, not because quote-unquote, without Eren, humanity is gone and the Titans win, but because Eren is the only way he can get to the basement and prove his father's theory. He was a great leader, but he was a selfish person. This made him such a realistic character and arguably the most complex character in the entire show. Erwin's selfishness is what made him a great leader. Without him in the story, they would not reach the point on where they ended up in the show. Erwin had so many horrible deeds committed to his own comrades, sacrificing them in the female Titan mission, the Eren retrieval mission, and the basement mission. He represented the iconic line, "The only one who can lay waste to the Titans is a devil," later reflecting Eren's actions. Erwin is such a well-written character that I could see him being a character in shows like Game of Thrones. But I still think there is someone above him. Reiner is a character that has to suffer with trauma and guilt. Reiner's mom loved him? No, he did not. Reiner qualified being a warrior candidate fair and square? No, he did not. Was Reiner the cause of Marcel being killed? Yes, he was. Reiner also became this big brother-like figure to the people of Paradise. Because of him acting like such, he developed another personality to the fullest. He cared for the people that he was missioned to kill, hence adding to his guilt that he has to kill these otherwise normal people if they weren't able to turn into Titans. He joined the warrior program to become a hero, yet he just added more to his trauma from his childhood. He lost his dream, and he has nothing more to do but to just kill himself. He never forgave himself. That was until Eren told him that they were the same person. And yes, Eren is correct, but I think Reiner is just much more tragic as a character. Eren at least had people who cared for him. Reiner had people who cared about him but realized he has to kill these people. In many ways, Reiner is the biggest victim of this cruel world, and I think that he was able to experience the worst things imaginable to any person living. Everything he thought was right was a lie, and he did bad things not knowing that. Anyways, before I start crying thinking about this show again, that was my list of my top 10 favorite characters in the show Attack on Titan. I will truly miss this show, and I will use it as the standard for quality TV shows that I will watch in the future. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.